required, and even though less than 1% of actual individual tax returns get audited per information provided by the IRS, doesn't necessarily mean you might not get a nasty knock at the door one day. So before you do, let me give you some common mistakes that retirees potentially make, which can potentially raise red flags with the IRS. Number one is not understanding what you're doing. If you have no idea what you're doing, no matter how easy you might think it is to complete those IRS forms or tax forms, chances are you will make mistakes. Now, these mistakes might not immediately get you audited, but what they'll probably do is cost you in additional taxes because you really don't understand how to properly fill out the forms and how things go together. Number two is a doozy. It's forgetting your required minimum distribution. Now, this is a nasty one, but it does happen to people because people just sometimes forget. Now, it's rather easy to fix, but however, if you don't, it's a doozy here because not only do you have to pay taxes on the distribution, but you have to pay a 50% penalty on the money you should have taken out. So it's a costly one. So make sure that you don't forget your required minimum distribution. And if you're a client, you're not going to forget your required minimum distribution. Number three is your medical expenses. Listen, I'm not saying not to deduct your medical expenses. And I'm also not saying that the IRS is not oblivious to the fact that people do get sick on a yearly basis. Some people get sicker than others. The IRS is also not oblivious to the fact that health insurance premiums have risen. They've doubled, they've even tripled in some cases. However, what I am saying is keep your records and make sure that you have proof of your expenses, and don't get aggressive. Don't get overly aggressive on these medical expenses because if they're higher compared to your income, it can raise some red flags. But as long as you have all the information, then everything is on the up and up. And number four is charitable donations. Be careful of what the real value of that goodwill donation is, and be careful of what you're actually giving to the church versus what you're stating in your tax return. Again, not saying not to make donations. I want you to make charitable donations. However, just make sure that the actual amount that you're giving is what you're actually putting on your tax return. If you're one of our clients, then obviously we have the ability to do the tax return, and it's a service that we offer, an additional service that we offer. But if we don't do your tax return, just send us your return and we'll look it over. Make sure that everything seems to be correct, and it just acts as a second set of eyes to make sure that we might be able to catch any mistakes that might happen along the way. So with that said, I'll see you next time, and just be careful. Don't get audited.